Hey friends, happy hump day. I'm Claudia Bellafato here in the Boston DraftKings studio. We've got a great show planned for you, starting with the Nova Knicks, baby. That's what we're going to call them from now on. A big trade last night with Mikal Bridges. NBA Draft Day 1 is today. Jay Bilas will join us to talk about it. And eyes on the cup. Just why was everybody watching the Stanley Cup playoffs? And just where in the world is Lord Stanley's Cup?
We are GoJo-less as we do GoJo and Golic. We will get to who is filling in on her actual day. She normally does fill in, so we're not too thrown off. But as always, download, subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen, and leave us that 5-star rating. We would really like that. I would really like that. Maybe I'll give you $1 if you do that. I probably can't say that. Watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 Eastern time on DraftKings Network. And filling in for Mike, my son, and we're going to get to where he's going, is we normally do a Wilder Wednesday, but she's been on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, rarely on Wednesday. Now Charlotte Wilder filling in for an entire Wednesday to make it a true Wilder Wednesday. Charlotte, wow. Thanks for being here Wednesday, and thanks for filling in.
Listen, thanks for having me. As always, I will take that $1 now. Senior, I thought you were going to say, and filling in for my son is my daughter, Charlotte Wilder. So, off to a great start. No, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm psyched to be hanging out with you guys for 2 hours. There's a lot to talk about today, which is not always the case in June.
In summertime, as anybody who listens to radio or watches sports shows on TV during the summertime, you get a lot of Mount Rushmores, a lot of lists, a lot of top tens, and a lot of goofy things, which, by the way, we'll do without question because it is summertime. So again, Charlotte in all day today. Claudia Bellafato still with us in the Boston studios for the rest of this week as well. Before we get to the incredible news, Mikal Bridges ending up a Knick, and the Villanova players now on the Knicks as they're trying to chase the Boston Celtics. This was a monster trade that we're going to, all the different tentacles of that we are going to get to, which I know Charlotte's husband is going to be extremely happy as a Knick fan. First off, my son Mike, again, is off all the rest of this week and next week. He and a buddy are going to Japan, just heading off to Japan for 10 days, and they're taking off today, and it's an 11-hour flight. So I'm wondering, I did this one time way back when to call a preseason game. It was the Colts with Peyton Manning and the Atlanta Falcons. Myself, Mike Tirico was play-by-play. Chris Mortensen came as well. He was our sideline guy. And I remember this flight and how long of a flight it was. And Charlotte, I literally had to ask the flight attendant to stop offering me food, which is shocking for a Golic because I was just trying to sleep so much, but there was just constant delivery of snacks this whole time. Not to say that's a bad thing. It's not like I complain too loudly about it, but what's the furthest flight you've ever taken?
You know, the food delivery thing, that's very interesting because sometimes if I'm on flights and especially if I have been lucky enough for Delta to upgrade me to a business class seat, which happens because I've flown so much in my life, which is, you know, the perks of this job and also the times where your back gets thrown out. You know, I'll want to go to sleep, but then it's like, oh, well, they're bringing you food. And I'm like, well, when am I supposed to time this out? But I feel like for a flight that long, they kind of have it down to a science. And unfortunately, Senior, it's your willpower to be like, you know, I'm going to sit this next snack out to sleep. And I really understand how difficult that is. I also, this might be gross to some people, I really love plane food. Like, I really think I like how they give it to you in the little different compartments. I think it's very cute. So
That's
yeah,
what we put 5-year-olds.
It's exciting. Yeah. I'll give you that. It is exciting when you smell it. They're like cooking it up in that microwave and you're wondering what it's going to be. And it's usually the same thing, but it always tastes kind of good. And you don't know if it actually tastes good or if you're just bored and you're hungry. But either way, I do get that. I get it, Charlotte. I do.
Yeah, and like a little mini salad dressing bottle, and it's so cute. And I think the longest flight I've been on was I went to Athens. I spent where I went to college, we had what called Jan Plan, which was a January semester. And so for a month I was in Greece, and that flight, this is also very embarrassing. I don't know where all this is coming from today, guys, but I think I was 19, and you know, there's not the same drinking age in Greece. And so two of my friends and we get on this plane, and for some reason, they offered us Baileys. They were like, do you want Baileys with ice? I don't know how this happened. I don't know if I chose this, to be honest. I don't know what was happening. We landed and I was so hungover at the baggage claim in Athens at 19 years old. To this day, I have never had a drink on a plane since. I'm like, the altitude, the dry air. Yeah, never again. So that was my longest flight. And I think we had a pretty good time, but it wasn't worth it.
You were naughty on the plane, drinking underage what you thought, but you're right. It's different, obviously, outside. Claudia, what's the furthest flight you ever took?
Scotland, probably. Really just because I had a layover, so it was just a long day in general. I guess I'm not too much of a world traveler. That's embarrassing to say. No, like France and Scotland.
Not. I mean, a lot of people don't. We were, Claudia, Charlotte, yesterday we were discussing, one of the things we did was what people are calling raw dog flying now, raw dogging, where they will just sit, and it's not what you think. Where they
I think we should just use a different word. I know that's what they say, Senior, but
I don't know how that word came to. I'm with you. I don't know why they call it that. But Charlotte, what it is guys will sit and not watch any entertainment. They'll watch the screen that shows the plane, the plane flying wherever the destination is. They'll just watch that. They will not eat. They will not drink. And you get bonus points if you don't go to the bathroom. This is one of the dumbest things I have ever heard of in my life. Yet I think there are people that actually do this and keep score.
Okay. First of all, not drinking anything on a plane. Like since being scared of anything that would dehydrate me further, I get on that plane. And I think we've talked about this here before. I have two smart waters, like 2 big waters, and also usually a window seat. So I'm just an agent of chaos when I'm like, excuse me, can you get up?
You're
But
one of
also
those,
if it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. So, but I actually, part of that I do identify with is I will watch the flight thing. Like there are some times where I'm on a flight and if the Wi-Fi isn't working, or if I'm pretending that the Wi-Fi isn't working so that nobody can contact me for a couple of hours, I will just stare at that flight tracker. But I will be listening to stuff and I will drink water. So that's why do people make things worse for themselves, guys?
I don't
Why do
know.
people do that?
I just have to say the raw dog, well, whatever, we're going to find a different word. But going without doing things just reminded me quick, and we do have to get to this massive trade that happened in the NBA last night. However, on my way to Scotland, this reminded me, a guy knocked out so hard next to me that he took his shirt off. Because apparently he sleeps with his shirt off. But he was like a younger kid, so I felt so bad. And he woke up and he's like, feeling good. He's like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me? I was like, what was I supposed to do? Tell you took your shirt off? So some people really go like, no shoes, no food, no drink, no shirt. That was this dude.
Wow.
So,
No service, am I right?
No service.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
No, the lady was still like, you want cookies? He's like, yeah. I was like, this is weird, man.
Wow.
It's crazy, Claudia.
Yeah, we have to have you put your shirt on first before you get the cookies. Well, all right. Well, Mike's heading out today to Japan, so I'm sure we'll hear stories of that trip. I guarantee you he will not be staring at the screen. He's downloaded many an episode and will eat up a storm on that flight. But Claudia, you said it. We got to get to it. We have the draft starting tonight. We're going to talk to Jay Bilas here shortly about the draft. But boy, there was some news last night in the NBA, which the Villanova gang is getting back together even more.
Yeah, some New York action. I'm curious what you think on this too, Charlotte, being out there in New York, if they feel a type of way about this. But the Knicks traded with the Nets for Mikal Bridges in exchange for a haul of draft picks. That includes 4 unprotected first rounders. So the Nova Knicks, like I said at the top, that's what we're calling them, because now you have Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and you're bringing in Bridges. They all led the Wildcats to that 2016 Natty. The Nets also swapped picks in a trade with the Rockets, which has now left Brooklyn with a total of 16 first-rounders available through 2031. And I want to talk about this trade and that trade as well, and then what's next for this squad, because you want to keep OG Anunoby, Isaiah Hartenstein. Where are you finding all this money? But let's first start with this Bridges trade, and I want to get the sense, the vibe in your household, Charlotte, because we know that you have some Knicks fans over there.
Oh my God. Well, I think first of all, I find this so delightful. Like, I think that Mikal Bridges joining the Knicks is the cutest basketball trade we've had in a long time.
Cutest?
Because it's adorable. Senior, think about it. So you've got Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, all season long, all of last season. Josh Hart was what I think you could, without raising too many eyebrows, because the Heat's Bam Adebayo actually said this on Twitter last night. He said, y'all was tampering, because Josh Hart was straight up tampering. Josh Hart would say, when are you joining us? Josh Hart would say stuff in the media. He would tweet stuff. Mikal Bridges would be asked about it. I think I might have even asked Mikal Bridges about it at Media Day last year for the Nets, being like, Josh Hart clowns you a lot. And so the fact that it worked is sort of the funniest thing ever. It's also a real testament, I would say, to the power of friendship, or of dudes looking out for each other. But I think it's cuter to think of it as friendship. So this, to me, it also, from a basketball standpoint, I do think it makes a lot of sense. Mikal Bridges is an incredibly consistent player. You see there almost 20 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, almost 4 assists per game. Like, this guy is, I think he is one of the most underrated players in the league, just because I don't think he's really had that moment where he can be that star. And so when you couple that with the team chemistry that they obviously already have, that you're bringing in, I think it's great. And my husband, a Knicks fan, there was some flipping out in our household. It was like, no way. Like, it is such a galvanizing moment for both fans and the Knicks themselves. I think that to come into the season with that kind of excitement, Senior, feels huge to me.
Oh, again, people understand there are 4 players in professional basketball on the same team that were not only teammates in college, but won a national championship. I mean, that is stunning. The 4 of them FaceTime.
I believe.
Yeah. Oh, two titles? Oh, I thought it was for the 4 of them. I thought
was Bridges there for the 2018 one? I'm Googling this. Continue.
You go ahead, continue that. That is an amazing thing to me. That these guys, it was incredible with 3, and now they have 4. But with Bridges, I think you have to understand, where he is on both sides, offense and defense. He's one of 4 players with 1,500 points, 153 pointers, and at least 75 steals in each of the last 2 seasons. That's with Luka, Anthony Edwards, and Jason Tatum. So that's some really nice company. Oh, by the way, he plays. He doesn't miss games. He's played 474 straight games to begin his career, the longest streak in the NBA over the past 40 seasons. Unfortunately, if they re-sign OG, that's kind of the difference. OG's hurt a little bit. Bridges not hurt a little bit. But still, is this enough, Charlotte? I'm wondering, because you do have Mitchell Robinson in the middle. Hartenstein, I don't know what's good. They may have a tough time holding on to him. And we all understand these moves are to beat Boston. These moves are to get past Boston. Boston is clearly the best team in the East. So you have some moves, this move there, obviously that's going to help. But what's going to happen in the middle, especially if Porzingis is healthy, which can be a question mark for Boston. Obviously, can they have enough on the inside, the Knicks, if they lose Hartenstein? It looks like from outside the paint they would, but inside the paint, how are they going to compete there?
I mean, that's what's fascinating to me, because I think that Isaiah Hartenstein emerged last season as a much more of an integral piece of this puzzle than maybe people thought he would have been. I mean, I think part of it too, Senior, is that he commands a lot more money now in the market because of how he played, especially through the playoffs, to the point where it's going to be hard for the Knicks to keep all that together money-wise. But I also feel like Hartenstein is a very, very important piece of this puzzle. I mean, the way he was rebounding last season, this season, what is time if not a social construct? But the way he was rebounding was that of a maniac. I mean, it was incredible. And he was the difference in a lot of those games, especially when guys started getting hurt. So I think I'm fascinated to see what happens there. Obviously, they have Mitchell Robinson, who has also been hurt. They have, Precious Achiuwa came in to fill that role for them. So I think that they can figure it out. I do think that losing Hartenstein would be something that they would need to adjust for. But the idea of OG coming back, also, I sort of forgot Julius Randle is still on the team. They've still got another all-star. Like this is like, you ever think when something bad happens, like, hey, I wish that hadn't happened, and imagine what it would be like if the good thing had happened? Like Knicks fans are not used to living in the good timeline. And so I think it's creating a lot of confusion, and the synapses in Knicks fans' brains are like firing in weird ways. And they're like, I don't understand this. Cause I think overall, oh yeah, see, look at that, balloons. Everybody in New York is so excited for Mikal Bridges. I think it's a really, it's a big moment for Knicks fans to have all these guys together.
Senior, I want to bring these odds in because this was a little surprising to me, right? The Knicks were 13-1 before this trade. They went all the way down to 10-1. Now, let me read you these teams at the top of the board. Celtics, of course, the favorite at plus 290. You have the Knicks at 8-1, then the Thunder 850, then the Timberwolves, Bucks, Knicks, all 10-1. Now, I understand if they can keep OG Anunoby, you just talked about Hartenstein, then yes, we're talking about depth, and that's probably a huge reason that this number moved the way that it did. But Brian Windhorst said something that I sort of agreed with this morning, and that's, Bridges himself, I don't think is enough to move the odds like that, right? He's an elite role player. He's not a star. He was with the Nets, but, he's an elite role player with the depth that this team has. Are you surprised, or how surprised are you that the number moved this much? Now they have the 4th shortest odds with those other squads.
I'm not surprised that they moved some. In this day and age, I thought it was going to move more. Again, I know nothing about the gambling like you about how much is going to make a line move. So I'm not surprised they went up. Like I said, when J.J. Redick took over the Lakers, the line went up for them, and he's never coached a game in the NBA. So talk about me not understanding how it all works. I don't get that at all. I could see with a player like Bridges, who's had a really nice career so far. He's got a couple more years on his contract, but he can sign that extension, I think, in October. So I'm not overly shocked about this. On the other side, Charlotte, what do you think? How about the Nets? The Nets have 16 first-round picks through 2031. I mean, talk about having an arsenal. And you knew that the Knicks, or the Nets do. The Nets have that. You knew the Knicks were going to have to pay big. You can't trade in the same conference and trade over the bridge, somebody over the bridge, and not have to give up a lot. So the Nets, through other trades as well, have 16 first-round picks up to 2031.
Yeah, maybe it'll be enough to for the Celtics to win another championship if they trade them smartly again. No, just kidding. I think that to me, the interesting thing to me is that Alex Caruso, when he got traded recently from the Bulls to the Thunder, no first round picks. That was a 1-for-1, Caruso, Josh Giddey swap. So the fact that it was 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, I was like, wow, Josh Hart has done an amazing job convincing this front office. But I don't hate it. So I was pretty surprised, Senior. I also think that the Nets are going to be absolutely fascinating to watch over the next couple of years. That's going to be some of the most fun off-season and trade deadline moves we're going to get. I would imagine. We'll see.
So the Knicks will grab the headlines for most of the day. And then tonight is day 1 of the NBA draft. Charlotte, I know you're going to be there. Jay Bilas is going to join us. Jay Bilas' first draft that he covered, I believe, was the LeBron James draft. So now he's covering a draft in this one, which nobody really is saying a whole lot about, but he's going to tell us who the future stars are. Coming up next. Welcome back to GoJo Golic. Again, we are GoJo Less as my son Mike is heading out to Japan today for 10 days to kind of check out the sights and sound there. But sports go on, and where it's going on for the next 2 days for the first time is the NBA draft. And joining us now is an old teammate of mine at ESPN, Jay Bilas, basketball analyst for ESPN, played at Duke, played under Coach K, coached under him as well, and has been covering. If I said it correctly, was your first draft you covered, Jay, the LeBron James draft?
Yeah, 22 years ago. It's crazy.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. So, I want to get to this draft, but Mikal Bridges gets traded to the Knicks, and obviously you cover college basketball. So let's go back to the 2016 Villanova Wildcats, which had these four players, Hart, DiVincenzo, Brunson, and Bridges on this team. What that team was like when you were covering them, then now they're all together with the Knicks.
I don't ever remember this kind of thing happening, Mike, where you have, four guys from one team that all played together in college playing together in the NBA. And, it's a relatively easy commute for Mikal Bridges. But, the Knicks had to give up a fair amount to get him. He's a great player, but I'm expecting Jay Wright to be named president of basketball operations next week so they can run it back.
I know, Jay, I was like, if they don't bring Ryan Arcidiacono back to the Knicks after this, like the University of Villanova dean is going to, or Villanova University, excuse me, the dean is going to have to get involved because this is bullying.
Yeah, I just don't remember this. I'm sure it's happened before when you had maybe three guys that played on the same, or maybe went to the same school, but maybe didn't play together. But having four guys that were all on the floor together in college, it's going to be quite a Wildcat reunion. You're going to have to listen to all that Villanova nonsense constantly. Oh, man. What could be worse? So if like four Duke guys got back together, that would cause a huge riot.
Oh, no.
Boy, that is there. Yeah. So, all right. So we get to the draft again. First time it's 2 day. And I don't want to hang on this. Everybody's talking about it. Boy, it's not a draft. Man, these are players that have worked all their life for this moment. So, I hope they really, really enjoy this. And as far as the draft is concerned, do you think at the top it is Zach Richiche that he is going to be the guy? Or do you think there is still some, undetermined out there as far as teams are concerned about where they want to go at the top for Atlanta?
I think there's a lot of undetermined in this, Mike. I mean, it seems like every year you hear stories about, hey, these guys are locked into this spot. And then it turns out different. And I don't, honestly, all these years doing it, you look at some of these mock drafts because they're interesting. And, but I'm not sure paying attention to those things is really smart because, it could be Donovan Clingan, number 1 overall from UConn, going to Atlanta. I have no idea what they're going to do. But I think that this draft, there's more uncertainty throughout this draft than any draft that I can remember. You'd probably have to go back to, 2013 or so when Anthony Bennett of UNLV was the number 1 overall pick to Cleveland, where, it seemed so uncertain. And I hear what you're saying about, it's not the player's fault that people are saying this is not a great draft. But, I think we have to be straightforward about it. It's not a headline draft, and there aren't any no-brainers at the top here. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be great players coming out of this draft, because I really think if Jalen Brunson were coming out of Villanova right now this year and Tyrese Halliburton were coming out of Iowa State, we'd say it was a bad draft, and those guys are all NBA players. So players are going to emerge from this. But it seems like every player, for all the positives they may have, there's also some question marks. And there aren't, usually you'd have a few players in the draft where you go, don't even need to talk about it. Number 1 pick, like Wembanyama last year, didn't need to talk about it. Don't, if people are going, what makes him so good? Just watch. It takes you 5 minutes. You'll figure it out. It's not that hard. And, but there's nobody like that in this draft.
Jay, it's kind of amazing that the first draft you covered, LeBron James, now 22 years later, his son Bronny is in this draft. I feel personally like the noise has sort of quieted down a little bit recently in regards to Bronny and what's happening there. Does it seem to you like a foregone conclusion that the Lakers will take him?
I don't know. Bronny James is the most talked about second round pick in the history of basketball.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time on him last night during our preview show, which has never happened. We've never talked about a second round pick for an entire segment. And I watched him play in high school. I did his father's games in high school, and then they assigned me to Bronny's game. And I was telling some of our bosses, if you assign me to LeBron's grandson's games, I'm out. Like I'm not taking part in any of this. But when I watched him play in high school at Sierra Canyon in LA, I thought, hey, he's a really good player. I didn't see him necessarily as a one and done type player. I thought he should be in college for a while if he chose to go to college. He's not there yet, but he's got talent. He's very athletic. He's got good defensive instincts. He's a good passer. He's a really good teammate. He's a competitive young man, but he's not a first round pick. And that doesn't mean he's not going to play in the league and not going to play for a long time and be a good player. But the hype surrounding him came from his last name, and that's okay. It's not his fault. He's a good player and he does everything right. But the heart issue that he had cardiac arrest before the season started, and that set him back 4 or 5 months maybe in his development. And that's part of it too. But whether he played or not, that's not going to make him taller and change his measurables and stuff like that. But I like him as a prospect. I just didn't see him as a first round type of talent.
So, Jay, as we look at some of these players, in my sport and football, when we go over the draft, we look at guys whose game translates to the pros, how it translates best. So in the couple minutes that we have left, who in your mind, we know the top names of where they may go, but as far as their actual game on the court, who are a couple of guys that you really see, that game, what they play really works at the next level?
Well, the guy that is the presumptive number one pick that everybody's saying will go number one, Zachary Risacher from France, translates really well to the NBA because he's so versatile and he's tall and long armed and he can shoot it and put it on the deck. He's got what the modern NBA needs. I actually think even though he's small, Reed Shepherd translates really well because he can shoot it. And he can really shoot it. He shot 52% from three last year and was he's the best shooter in this draft. And I think you have to go back like 30 years before you can get a guy who shot over 50% from three that's going to go in the first round. And I think Dalton Knecht at Tennessee is going to translate because of his size and his ability to shoot it as well. There are a number of guys that are going to translate well, but it's kind of like we were talking about before. There are question marks with some of them or all of them. Maybe one guy, Stephon Castle of UConn is going to be, I think he may be the best prospect in this draft, but he hasn't figured out the perimeter shooting yet. He's not consistent yet, but I think he can get that. Everything else is a number one. And I actually, as a prospect, like him the best out of everybody. I'm not saying I would take him number one because, I think this is a need draft. It's not a lot of drafts, Mike, you go best available player. But in this draft, I think you're going need and fit. You wouldn't take the best available guard if you need a big guy. And Atlanta needs some defense in this one.
Yeah, Castle plays some excellent defense without question. So again, the draft is 2 nights. Tonight, it is first round is 8:00 Eastern. And the second round will be tomorrow at 4:00 Eastern on ESPN, ABC, and ESPN. So the first time 2 days. So we get 2 days of Jay Bilas at the draft. I know, Charlotte, you're going to be there as well. Hopefully you guys will run into each other and talk a little bit of shop. But Jay, enjoy this draft with LeBron years ago, Bronny's son, and then, like we said, maybe another relative down the road. We got another son coming up maybe pretty soon that you'll be dealing with as well. We appreciate your time, man.
Always a pleasure. And they changed it to 2 days because I needed to go to the bathroom. I can't sit there for 9 straight hours anymore.
Oh, congrats, man. Well, Jay. That's fantastic.
That's what happens with age. Get up twice in the night. That's okay. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks, Jay. All right. So again, the draft 2 nights tonight, pretty, or 2 days now. Which makes it a little longer, which makes it pretty interesting for the fact that nobody considers this a great draft now. We got through 2 days of it. Coming up next, though, the greatest championship cup in all of sports, Stanley Cup, starts making its rounds, and it's had some things to say.
We're halfway hour 1 of GoJo and Golic, and now is the time where we play Where's Waldo? But we do it with the Stanley Cup because it's making its way around South Florida. As you can see, Kachuk decides, let's just go chuck this one into the Atlantic Ocean, and that's exactly what he does, as he should. I mean, come on, you're living in Florida, you brought home the cup. People are checking to see if they drop their phones. I don't think this man cares what's in his pockets because he won the Stanley Cup. Here, somebody said online, this is at 10 in the morning. Elbow Room, clearly a bar, just pouring. We call this a beer fountain, right? Can we call it that? Beer fountain into this poor man. Poor man, but it's probably the best day of his life. Somebody's beautiful house on a dock, people going by. This, each player gets a day with it, each coach. I don't think it would ever leave their hands. We've seen players sleep with it in the past. They're doing exactly what they should be doing as Stanley Cup champions for the first time. Already some Stanley Cups in Florida, but finally it goes to the Panthers. And I would like to know, Senior, if you had the Stanley Cup for a day, where would you take it?
Oh, I'd probably take it to a bar or a restaurant. I mean, that would kind of fit us, my family. It's eating or drinking. I've been in the Elbow Room, so I loved that video of him dumping beer on some guy who was just absolutely loving the beer shower. Charlotte, I think this is the best, not only the best trophy in all of sports, but the best use of it and the best way we see it, that every player and every coach gets a day with the cup. And I would like to know if there are any restrictions, if when you are handed the cup, there's a list of things you can't do, because I sure as hell haven't seen a whole lot that this cup hasn't seen. We know it's been dented. It's been full. I think I heard it can hold 17 12-ounce drinks of your choice. So for me, you could put 17 12-ounce beers in that thing and just drink out of it like a trough. So to me, Charlotte, it's the best trophy. I love how it travels around, and I would really like to know if there's something you're not allowed to do with that thing.
No, I think that it's sort of unparalleled. I do, as I watch Kachuk chuck it into the ocean, I have to say there's something very funny to me about how the Stanley Cup is guarded all year round. They have the keepers of the cup. They have the guys who carry it around with white gloves. You're not allowed to touch it. They act like this thing is, a national secret. And then once players win it, it's like the white gloves come off, and like they're not even worried about protecting it anymore. They're just like throwing it in the ocean. You remember when Ovechkin took it into that fountain in DC, and that it's sort of why I'm like, is anybody a little bit worried about this? Maybe I'm just like, I feel like I'm bringing a lot of, daughter energy to this, where like if it's your parents' house and and people are there and you're like, can you just not mess anything up, please? Like that's sort of how I feel watching the cup. And I think it's absolutely amazing that there is a league that lets its hair down that much. And hockey players have a lot of lettuce. So to let their players just go crazy with it, because do you think like well, I guess Tom Brady threw the Lombardi Trophy. So
he did.
Almost into the ocean. Yeah.
But this, you're right. The gloves come off, and anything goes with this cup. Claudia, you're the hockey person of this group, of this show. What would you do if you had it for a day?
Well, this is going to sound gross because I was going to say I'd go to the beach or on my boat and drink sangria out of it because that's my favorite. But our producer Matt just sent me an article saying some player's baby pooped in the Stanley Cup. So all of this beer that's being drank, I don't know what it was. I didn't read the whole article, but all of this beer and sangria and whatever else that's being drank, a baby has half pooped in Lord Stanley's Cup.
Really? Wow. That's true. A baby's a poop.
Yeah, think about it. Like if you put Jackson in, well, I mean, I think Jackson would know better. But if you put like a newborn baby or like Alex, if you put Alex in, they don't know any better.
Yeah.
They christen the cup.
My 6-month-old granddaughter, I'm not gonna lie, it would never enter my mind to say, let my young child poop into this Stanley Cup.
No, he didn't say poop in the cup. They probably put the child in the cup without a diaper on, I guess. I don't really know. I have to read the article, but just so everybody knows, poop has been in the cup.
Yeah. Here's a controversial take. What if I feel like I might get the cup, as a hockey player
When
who
you
will
win.
definitely win
Yeah.
a championship, right? I would be tempted. Like, I get so tired, and I can't help but think how tired athletes must be after they win championships. I know they're still running on adrenaline, but I might be like, my ideal day with the cup is like have it sit next to me on the couch, like binge watch a show, have a nice meal at home, put the cup in a bed with me. Like, it would be pretty funny if someone got the cup and then didn't do anything like exciting or funny or particularly photogenic with it. They were just like, I think I just want to hang out at home with this thing. Like, has anyone ever done that?
Oh, I'm
We haven't
sure. I'm
heard
sure they
about it.
slept with it. I'm sure they laid it in the bed with them, and went to sleep with the. It's again, I think it's the best in all of sports. I think it's one of the coolest things we see, and it comes in hockey. And Claudia, one of the other things that comes with hockey is when the season is over, after a season filled of this guy is out with an upper body injury, this guy is out with a lower body injury, we start to find out what those injuries actually are when the season ends.
Yeah, and losing the Stanley Cup playoffs is already enough damage, but then you get damage to your two best players. That's what happened to Edmonton, Connor McDavid, who, it's no surprise, and Senior, you say this all the time, when it comes down the stretch in any season, nobody's truly healthy, but when you have to get surgery in the offseason, that's not great. So Zach Lang of Oilers Nation reported that, not confirmed, but he reported McDavid dealing with the abdominal injury that likely requires surgery. And then Draisaitl, who's going into his last year of his contract, had a broken rib and a broken finger. I'm sure hockey guys are used to broken fingers, but any type of surgery, especially to a player like Connor McDavid, obviously not good news for the Oilers, Senior.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is what happens pretty much in every sport, though, as far as surgeries. We basically had a line after the season was over of being in the hospital of getting scoped. That was always the big surgery because you'd have an operation a while ago. And a lot of times when you have an operation, the whole idea of rehabbing is to not do what caused that, but we go back out on the field, they go back out in the ice and you do it again. So you get scar tissue that builds up and tears. And every year or every other year, you got to go and you got to get it taken out. So this is kind of the norm, Charlotte, in all the sports is right after the season. If you got to get something done, get it done, whether it's major surgery, certainly you have to, but even if it's a scope, because this is your time off and you can start rehabbing pretty much right away. But we hear it in hockey because we don't know what the injuries are until after the season. Then we're like, oh, that guy played with this. We always knew they were tough players, but they play with a lot of injury.
It's really wild. I think the degree to which athletes are able to compartmentalize that pain and to go on adrenaline, and hockey players, famously, it's the tough guys who never say, when asked a question,
right,
any kind of answer, and then it comes out after. I think it's also helpful for the Oilers in this case because McDavid did not show up in Game 7 or 6 really in a way that was meaningful. And I think that this is sort of if I were a fan, at least, I think I'd be feeling sort of like, okay, well, that makes a little more sense. And I think it buys them a little bit more goodwill for something like this to come out now after a loss like that, to say, hey, it's not that he wasn't trying, it's that he needs surgery on his stomach. So, they'll obviously say, we don't want this to be an excuse. It's not an excuse. They'll say we're not putting the information out for anyone to give us a pass. But I think it is a little bit helpful for their narrative right now, guys.
Oh, without question. I agree. And again, some of the numbers to it, 16.3 million viewers watch Game 7. Most watched final game not in the NFL, so it means hockey, basketball, and baseball in North America since 2019. This Game 7 drew the largest non-original 6 audience on record. And the playoffs on the ESPN platforms averaged 1.8 million viewers, up 60% to last year. And once it went back to ESPN and ABC, you knew the ratings would be up. And then we get, a series like that. So it's pretty impressive. I want to go back to the NBA champions, and not so much the winning there, but how about a guy that everybody loved on that team that's not on this team and didn't get to celebrate it how he feels? That's coming up next.
be salty.
I know you ain't salty.
No, I'm not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about everybody's probably.
I'll just let you speak.
There's no hard feelings for them.
Congratulations, fellas.
Don't get it twisted. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely a bittersweet feeling.
Congratulations, boy. God damn.
Nah, but you know, it's definitely tough because, like I said, you know, I was in them trenches with them.
For sure, bro.
To be able not to finish what you started with those guys is definitely tough.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Again, Charlotte Wilder in for my son, Mike. And that was Marcus Smart on the Run Your Race podcast. 9 seasons, Charlotte, in Boston. As he said, he was in the trenches with these guys, gets traded away. That brings Kristaps Porzingis to Boston, which obviously was a pretty big deal, even though in the post he was hurt most of the time. I mean, you know, there's feeling bad. I never, you know, me and Mike talk about this a lot. You feel bad for an athlete, but there is that you spent all that time there and then they get the payoff and you're not on the team when it happens. So as a fan, do you feel bad for Marcus Smart?
I mean, I'm a particularly biased source here because Marcus Smart was my favorite player on that team. He brought so much heart beloved in Boston. And he did bring so much heart to this team to the point where, you know, on the defensive end, he was, you know, a defensive player of the year in 2022. He also, to the point where you kind of forgave him when he took a 3 that you knew wasn't going to go in, which I think having players who took 3s that did go in this year was clearly very helpful for Boston. I was pretty devastated when they traded him at the start of last season. I understand that from a basketball perspective, it was definitely what needed to happen. And I think unbelievable foresight and, you know, a pretty ruthless and brilliant trade on the part of Brad Stevens, and to the degree that Coach Joe Mazzulla was involved in it. But that was my first thought when they won, because in 2022, when the Celtics lost the finals, I was in the press conferences afterwards, and I followed Marcus Smart out of the press conference room. I think he was the last guy to speak, and he was wearing these sequined green Nikes with, you know, the swoosh in the Celtics green, the sequins. And I think I wrote at the time that watching, Marcus Smart was crying as he walked out, sort of sniffling along the corridors of the back part of the stadium. And I think I wrote that, like, not being happy or crying in those sparkly shoes was the equivalent of like crying with a clown nose on. I felt so bad for him. It was like they were celebration shoes. It was not supposed to happen that way for him. But I think that knowing who he was as a player in Boston and the reputation he had, I was not surprised at all to see him come out so graciously, because the part of that clip we didn't see is how he was saying he was so proud of these guys. And he said, you know, my wife would tell you I was going as crazy as anybody watching them. And I think, unfortunately, for athletes, obviously, Senior, you would know better than I would, but when you're a part of something, of building something, I hope he still takes some pride, because the Celtics, I think, were where they were because of partly what he contributed. And Joe Mazzulla said in the press conferences this year, he was like, you know, this is a lot of people who are here who no longer work for the team are a big part of this, especially talking about Ime Udoka, who was not the coach after, you know, there's that whole thing. But I'm glad that we heard from Marcus. I'm glad that he said he was happy for them. And, you know, while still admitting it was bittersweet, I probably just took up way too much time talking about that, because this is something that has occupied space in my brain for a long time at this point, Senior. So thank you for giving me that platform.
But again, you know, 9 seasons with the team, 6 of those seasons, he had both Brown and Tatum as a teammate. So, and he's the kind of player that fans love because of the way he plays the game, has passion, has heart, plays hard. And that's what fans certainly appreciate. So, it had to be tough for him, but I'm sure he's very happy for his teammates. Is there a part of the celebration, the parade, or any of the part of the celebration? Because we had Sam Hauser on, and he confirmed that he did boot and rally when he bent down on that bus. He did throw up into a cooler full of beer. What he did tell us that we didn't know, Charlotte, I don't know if you heard this, his wife, who is due in September, she is pregnant and due in September, was on her hands and knees trying to save the beers in the cooler before he puked into the cooler so people could still drink them. She's the true MVP, but he did confirm he did boot and rally. But is there, outside of that, is there part of what was the best part of the celebration for you?
That was a very impressive interview you guys did. I did see it. I loved it. I think that she is a true hero among us. The part of the celebration that I loved the most was honestly the seeing the crowds in Boston. Like 1 million people came out for this. I think a lot of people hate Boston fans. I understand that. I think one thing you could not say about Boston fans is that no matter how many championships that city wins, they get complacent. And that made me very happy. You know, I think that it's important to show up for your team if you're a fan and you're demanding something from your athletes and then they win. I was very pleased to see that parade route so packed. I also thought Joe Mazzulla has been like walking around with the trophy and just showing random people on the street, right? Like that checks out. I think I would have liked it if he'd put on one of the nun costumes from the town and walked around with the trophy through Boston. I can't believe that nobody has done that yet, or, you know, shout whose cow we taken. But besides that, I've been really pleased with the way that the Celtics have celebrated. Has there been Claudia, you're in Boston. Has there been something you've particularly loved?
Yeah, I mean, I was there completely sober and everybody was so not sober. So in the moment, like, I don't think I could appreciate it as much because it was just, I was in a sandwich of drunk, sweaty people.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I think you and I have both said that sentiment of it felt like Boston fans were complacent. The players sort of gave off that energy and it's flipped. Everyone's so happy, you know, the city of Boston, the players themselves, they're all hyped. So that is amazing for them. I do want to get to this quickly, though, because looking at this next season, the fact that Porzingis, when we traded for him, I shouldn't say we, when Boston traded for Porzingis, we knew, right? We knew that injuries were a concern for him, as they are for tall, lengthy men like himself. Well, now he's getting surgery for that rare leg injury that he played through in the postseason, which means he's going to miss the Olympics. There's no timetable for his return. So for now, you have an injured Porzingis heading into this season and an aging Al Horford who says he wants to come back. So the question is, are they going to make some offseason changes? Here's what Brad Stevens had to say about it.
I think we would be crazy not to say the character and the foundation of this team is right. And let's see if we can, you know, be as consistent as we can, grow, develop, get better, you know, improve, you know, try some new things on both ends of the floor to add some juice and jolt that way. And then, you know, see if we can't pick up where we left off. So to answer your question, I don't anticipate like major changes, at least early on, because I think this team deserves that.
Charlotte, no major changes, he says. What's your reaction?
Here's what he's saying. He's saying until the trade deadline. And then when we realize how totally screwed we are, we will trade for Isaiah Hartenstein. No, I don't know who they would trade for. I don't know if they would do that. That to me sounds like, hey, we just won a championship. I'm not going to disrespect any of my players. We'll come back. We'll see who's healthy. We'll see if Al can keep this going. But I'm making no promises when it comes to doing whatever I have to do for my team, because we've seen him be pretty ruthless with trades, as Marcus Smart shows. And I trust that Brad Stevens, I think it's a very humane way for him to handle this situation for right now.
I 1,000% agree that he's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're looking to tweak here, tweak there. You know, out of respect to those guys, hey, we're going to run it back the same way, but then all bets are off when we get going on the season. Can you trust Porzingis, who's going through this surgery, one of the many players who will have to rehab in the offseason, or 38 to 39-year-old Al Horford? Can you trust that inside presence from age and injury to be able to carry you again? So I like the way Brad handled that, but we'll see what the outcome is during the season. Coming up next, we do have the draft, the NBA draft tonight, where Charlotte is going to be. It's a 2-day draft. Not a lot of hype about the top of that draft, but we're going to talk about that and a monster trade that went off in the NBA. Welcome back, GoJo and Golic. We are GoJo less again, as I said. Charlotte Wilder actually here on a Wilder Wednesday for the entire show. She is you're in Brooklyn, right? Are you in Brooklyn now waiting for the draft, right? As the draft begins tonight. So she is there. We talked to Jay Bilas earlier this hour. He is there for the draft. First time the draft is going to be 2 days. So we're going to jump into that. Again, my son, Mike, is heading off to Japan. We were talking about long travel, and I finally got this, Charlotte. I had to have my wife send it to me because I'm very bad at remembering all the places we stopped. But we went with the friends we traveled with, the Perianos. We went on a safari years ago, and the flight to there and back, we went Boston to London to Cape Town to Arusha to Tanzania, then Tanzania to Arusha to Nairobi to Zanzibar to London to Boston. That was a travel there and back. And it was, let me tell you, it can get tough. Very, very tough when you're traveling that much and that long, especially if you have any kind of connection issues outside the country. If you were to miss a connection or something, it can absolutely be brutal.
Senior, do you feel, as a former athlete, I feel like I've talked to some guys who played in the NFL who say that flying can be very painful. Do you ever experience that because of injuries?
So let me take you inside a little bit to the underbelly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like this now. It was ran a little more rampant back then when they didn't monitor the pain medication that we were given. Yes.
Yeah.
When you have any kind of a swelling issue, high altitude does not help. High altitude is not a good thing. So, I mean, there were many, many, many of pain meds and anti-inflammatories and other meds that were handed out on plane rides back for guys that had, again, these were just not really major injuries, but minor injuries that had to do with inflammation, and you're going into high altitude. It's not the best in the world. So, yes, as I'll say, again, this was back when they handed out this stuff a little bit easier than they hand out today on how to get through flights. Or if you had, there were guys, I was one of them, if you had to take a pain-killing injection or something, before the game or at halftime or whatever, when that wears off and you're on a plane, it kind of doubles up that as well. But, the one thing I'll say I will always miss, this is as a pro athlete, when you travel in charters, I mean, the amount of food you get and the amount of rules you don't have to follow on a plane is awesome. And then when you land and you get driven everywhere, you get the police escorts everywhere. I was really bummed when I was done playing. All of a sudden, I'm flying on planes where I got to follow all the rules, and when I drive, I'm stuck in traffic because I don't get. I mean, talk about real problems that I had. But it was weird coming off of 4 years in college of that, 9 years in the NFL, so 13 years of getting chartered flights and getting driven everywhere we needed to go, to the reality of doing it yourself. I was kind of bummed.
Oh my God, I would be too. I feel former athletes should get police escorts whenever they're going to the airport. How about that?
I'm with you. I would like that, as people are disgusted with me right now. So I'll change the subject and talk before we get to the draft. There's a few things, and one was the big trade. Mikal Bridges gets traded from the Nets to the Knicks. So now, again, there are 4 Knicks: Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, and Mikal Bridges, who were not only teammates now in New York, but were teammates in Villanova when they won the title in 2016. It's unbelievable that these guys are all together on the Knicks. Knicks trading away picks. You knew they were going to have to give up a lot to trade, not only within the conference, but across the bridge. And they did. We'll get to the Nets, who have like 16 first-round picks until 2031, and another team and another player that it involves, which would be Kevin Durant. But Charlotte, first, we talked about this in the first hour, but a quick recap for your husband, who is very happy, and the Knicks, who are clearly doing everything they can to chase Boston. Draft picks be damned. Let's get players that can help us right now. How much closer do you think with this move they are to knocking off Boston?
Well, I think, first of all, I looked it up. I think Mikal Bridges was on the 2018 team that won, because people forget Brunson and DiVincenzo won in 2016 and 2018. Right. Josh Hart was on that 2016 team, and then Mikal Bridges was on that 2018 team. So they have now bridged the gap. They've got the final Infinity Stone, I suppose. I don't really know how the Avengers works. But Senior, I think this is a case where Mikal Bridges is such a great fit for the Knicks in terms of not missing. He hasn't missed a game since high school. He played he's sort of unbelievable in the durability he has, which I think, Tom Thibodeau will see as the coach of the Knicks as a chance to see if he can once and for all break this man, because we know that Tibbs does not believe in load management in any substantial way. But no, I think that given the chemistry he has and the fit that he is for this team, I think there's a reason Josh Hart was trying to get him there all of last year. I do think that it is a pretty steep price for him, and that there are other pieces that need to fall into place, specifically OG Anunoby. And I still feel that Josh Hartenstein at center is a big piece of this team. And it seems to me like, just in terms of how money works and how this is all going to shake out, that given how much money I think Hartenstein now commands on the market and how people forget, like, Nikola Jokic is still out there. You need centers. You need guys who can go up against that. So I'll be interesting to see if they do anything else at center, if they do have to get rid of Hartenstein. Obviously, they have Mitchell Robinson, but it's sort of fascinating to me. And I don't hate the addition of Mikal at all. I think he's an absolutely delightful person too. I interviewed him once about how in 2020, he went fishing in the bubble at Disneyland, and someone called him right as he was about to catch a fish. One of his teammates called him, and he fell over in the boat and didn't end up catching the fish. He's just a true delight.
Oh, that's a shame that cost him a fish. I fished those lakes there around Disney World. It's great. Got some nice bass in there. Yeah. And they have a great area where you can fish. So, and God knows those guys had plenty of time where they were in the bubble. So good to know he likes to fish like that as well. I do want to get to the draft, but I'm wondering, Charlotte, do you think that's the biggest question mark? If we want to sit there and talk about the two top teams, at least the 1 and 2 seed were Boston, which proved to be the best team, and then New York, that do you think the interior is the question mark for both, with Porzingis getting surgery and 38-year-old Al Horford, and then with Hartenstein, you don't even know if he's going to be there, but you do have Mitchell Robinson. Is that where both teams you think may have issues?
To me, yeah, Senior, because I can't really. It's hard to poke holes in the rest of it. I think what Jalen Brunson did for the Knicks last year, in terms of just he became a superstar in the way. I think for a lot of the season, it was hard to say he wasn't the best player in the East. I think the way that he was able to get around guys and decelerate, and his little pump fakes. I mean, he's unbelievably wily. He was tough. He didn't give up. He just put up insane numbers throughout the playoffs until he broke his hand. So I think that it's impossible to underestimate that team, given what they have in that superstar and the intensity of Josh Hart and DiVincenzo. I mean, and now you've got Bridges. It's hard to poke holes in the rest of it, especially because they're role players and bench guys, even like Alec Burks. He sort of stepped up in the playoffs in a few of those games against the Pacers. So to me, the biggest question for both of these teams, because obviously the Celtics, I mean, I could go on and on about how Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, finally silenced some of those critics, or at least they won. Who knows if you ever truly silence them, and perhaps Jason Tatum would prefer you didn't. But I think those teams are so robust in guards and on the wing that I think that those big man positions do become a little bit of a question. And I'm going to be fascinated to see, especially next year at the trade deadline, if this becomes the main narrative, because I think that they'll probably ride out what they have. And then, come December and January, start taking stock of okay, what do we actually need here to make another serious run? And I think that will be at that center position, Senior. But I'm very excited.
Yeah. Oh, it should be. It should be a team that certainly wants to try and make a run of the Phoenix Suns. This is interesting with Kevin Durant, the traveled man, Oklahoma City to Golden State to Brooklyn to the Phoenix Suns. And now the Rockets acquired some Phoenix Suns draft picks. And it gets convoluted, but the bottom line is there may have been a reason for that, as Brian Windhorst explains when he was on Unsportsmanlike.
They made this trade specifically to attempt to make a deal with the Suns, and they did it to make a deal with the Suns now. Now, to my knowledge, Kevin Durant has not asked for a trade. However, there are definite connections between Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets.
Oh boy, do we see Kevin Durant, Charlotte, on the move again?
Look, last year, this season, that was like, I'm saying last year as though it was last year. It was probably like 5 weeks ago at this point. The playoffs really take something out of a girl. But I think, Senior, something that I kept saying was if I were Durant, if I were LeBron, even a Chris Paul, you look at these older guys who are such legendary players who went to places with other legendary players who are around their same age. And, I know Booker and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are not as old as Durant, but that clearly did not work. I don't see it working. They don't seem to be wanting to add a true point guard, which I think they absolutely need. I thought they needed it before they didn't have it. But, it's fascinating because you look at these teams like the Timberwolves or the Thunder, and those rosters are pretty fully constructed. Like I
Right.
don't see them trading for someone like a Durant. They just don't need it. They have too many guys who can play that role who are much younger. But then you look at the Rockets, who Ime Udoka, former Celtics head coach, took from what was it? I believe it was a 22-60 team to a 41-41 team. The Rockets were exactly 500. They were 11th in the West, which, because of the imbalance between the conferences, that would have been 9th in the East. And so you have these amazing young players, Alperen Şengün. I'm totally blanking on the other guy that I was going to talk about. His name, Green. Who is it? Jalen Green. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Just pull back the fourth wall for everybody there. But I do think that when you look at this team that has so much talent, they have Reggie Bullock. They looked really, really good throughout points of last season. And Ime Udoka is an unbelievably talented coach at getting stuff out of these players. So if you're Kevin Durant and you're like, okay, I'm 35, 36, like if you're looking for another championship, if you need to prove that all of this moving around was worth it, move around one more time and see if you can't put something together with the Rockets. I don't think I think it is a much smarter play for him legacy-wise than staying with the Suns.
What comes to mind for me, Charlotte, and I'm curious with the time that you spent covering basketball and all of these stars that you mentioned, they try to form these super teams. It never really seems to work. I mean, if you want to call the Celtics a super team, I guess that worked. They had their two superstars, but KD is sort of chasing what seems to be that. The Rockets would not be. The fact that we can't really name three players off the top of our head. Do you think that's a better environment for him to get into and sort of build around him instead of a situation like the Suns to where he was sort of added on to what was the trio out there?
Yeah, I think that this is part of what we see in terms of copycat leagues, right? In the NFL, Sean McVay gets hired and all of a sudden anybody who is under the age of 35 shook hands with Sean McVay and, is sort of handsome can get a job. I think what we're seeing now with the NBA is, yes, there was this massive super team movement. I think it's a little more complicated to say that it's gone from super teams to not super teams, because I think the Celtics were a super team. I think the Knicks kind of are a super team. I think that the Timberwolves sort of are a super team, like the Bucks it's hard to say when these teams have a lot of stars like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. They are pretty good together. So I think the definition of super team we think of as stars coming from somewhere else rather than homegrown. Right. And I think what we're seeing now is teams putting much more of an emphasis on team play, on chemistry, on guys who have been developed in that place. And so Durant would be joining a team that could become a super team, depending on how these guys play. Like Şengün is so good, and people just don't know it because the Rockets weren't so good. So I think that this is more of a shift towards that kind of cohesive team play.
I agree. We had the connotation in our head of super team, you know, when Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron got together in Miami, right? And it paid off. They won. So it worked, right? That's what we think of. But we do see, and you've mentioned a lot of them, from the Knicks to Minnesota, Oklahoma City, even Cleveland, even Orlando. Now that Cleveland brought in, obviously, Donovan Mitchell. But kind of developing their players. That was one of the talks of Hurley going to the Lakers, is how well he develops talent for life after LeBron when you have to develop players. So the super teams is a different way of looking at it right now. It's not just grabbing the highest superstars and trying to match them all up. So we'll see what happens with Kevin Durant. And Claudia, we have the next batch of potential superstars in the draft tonight. So I know whenever there's a draft, there's odds on the draft on who's going where.
You're right. They've been out for a little bit, shifted, but not drastically like we've seen in past years, and specifically with the NFL. If we're talking all sports, we see crazy movement there. So right now, Risa Shea is the favorite, minus 250. So that did see some movement. He's become the heavier favorite with, again, smoke and mirrors. Jay Bilas said it in hour one, that just because the odds are shifting a certain way, just because people are saying certain things, doesn't mean that's exactly what's going to pan out. But so the France star is the favorite there. Donovan Clingan at a UConn at plus 250. So pretty big difference from 1 to 2. And then you have Alex Sarr at plus 650, another Frenchman. And then Stefan Castle, 22 to 1. So we're talking a big jump. So Risa Shea is the favorite, heavy favorite. He is expected to go number 1 overall. Bronny James, plus 200 to sneak into the first round. So that's the one name that we've certainly talked a lot about. Of course, expected to go to the Lakers at 55. So Charlotte, when you're looking at these odds, and, you know, I don't necessarily suggest betting, and I'm talking to you, I'm talking about in general, betting a market like this, you have to be very careful, because you don't want to put a ton of money on something just saying, oh, well, this guy's expected to go number 1 overall. He's minus 250. This isn't a Wemby situation, like Jay said. So if you are going to bet on a market like this, I would suggest sprinkling, you know, a little beer money play. Don't go crazy with it. If you had to make a play here, Charlotte, are you maybe going with, you know, Bronny James and trying to guess where he goes, assuming that he goes to the Lakers? Maybe do you go Sarr, you know, a little floater out there, or Clingan to go number 1 overall? What's your approach here?
You know, I'm not the best bettor, Claudia. I feel like for some instinct is saying don't count Donovan Clingan out. I think that he's a very impressive player. I think he's impressed a lot of coaches throughout the league. I think that as people do need big men, as we were just talking about, this could be a sort of, he could go higher than people were thinking. I also think, I don't even know, Claudia, Senior. This draft is crazy to me.
I think at the end of the day, after all the talk, I think Risa Shea is going to go number 1. I do think it's going to happen. Clingan's going to be interesting. You know, the rim protector, can be great in the pick and roll. Offensively, still kind of finding his way. Not a very good free throw shooter. And it's interesting. Sarr, the 7'1" kid, wants to be more of a 4. He's like this modern day big man who can play it from the outside as well, where Clingan would be more, you know, what the old 5 would be, you know, playing in the paint. So, and then obviously with Bronny, that's the interesting scenario. What's going to happen there? Do the Lakers actually take him? Because the thought is that LeBron is going to opt out of his, $51 million and sign a 3-year, $160-some million extension. What other could we see? A Paul George sign and trade? DeJounte Murray, is Atlanta going to move one of their guys, you know, but during this draft as well? Charlotte, you're there. How much, in just a few seconds left in this segment, is Bronny James a big talking point there?
I mean, I feel like he's anything LeBron James, whether it's junior or senior at this point, is going to move the needle, Senior. But I'll report back. Fascinated if they'll be there. I would assume not, but I will let you guys know everything that I see and hear.
All right, coming up next, you know me, I am an Olympic freak. The Olympic trials are going on right now, and sometimes you see such great joy, other times big time heartache. And boy, did that happen in the track and field trials. Welcome back, GoJo and Golic. My son Mike out, Charlotte Wilder in, Claudio Bellafato still sitting there in the Boston studios, doing a great job for us as well. And Olympics are right around the corner. And guys, if you've heard me talk about Olympics at all, you know I'm an Olympic freak. I'll watch archery. I will watch it all. I love the fact of the work these people do to get to the Olympics. And then, there's the joy and then there's the heartache. And it was a sport it was the first competitive sport I did in swimming. And my daughter did it all the way through college. Between that and track, when you're taking, in swimming, it's the top two swimmers. If you're third by 100th of a second, you've missed out on the Olympics by like the snap of a finger. It's got to be so devastating of what can cost you. So there's joy and there's sorrow. And then the track and field, trials are going on right now. And Athing Mo, who she is the 800-meter Olympic champion. And they were in the trials, and they're running the race. And what happened is she got clipped. Well, her coach says got clipped by another runner, fell down, and obviously, did not win this race or qualify for the Olympics because of this. And it turns out the officials basically well into the night it was appealed by Mo and her group and her coach and stuff. And it went deep into the evening about turning this over, overturning it and giving another shot or whatever they were going to do. And it got denied. So the Olympic champion is out of the Olympics. And there are other countries, and I wonder what you guys think about this. I'll start with you, Charlotte, Other countries will, if you are someone like this, you're automatically put on the team. But in the U.S., there are trials every time. You don't get just added to the team. You have to go through trials, and then something like this can happen where the best one in the world, the Olympic champion, is now out because of that fall. Just so devastating.
I mean, I've watched A Thing Mo for years now. My husband is a huge track and field fan, so we've watched all the trials. We watched the Worlds. We watched, the U.S. championships, and she's an unbelievable talent. She's an unbelievable runner. At 19, she won gold in Tokyo. And it just seems like a great way for U.S. track and field to shoot themselves in the foot by not having some sort of protocol where she can be in the Olympics. She is the reigning world champion. She has been consistent since then. This wouldn't be like a handout to someone who won in their 30s and, probably won't do anything for you if she gets back there. Like, this is also just such a missed opportunity for Mo in terms of branding, in terms like this is her livelihood. Every 4 years, this is her moment to make the most of this spotlight. And it just seems really, really silly. I feel like there should be some way of, if you've cumulatively, not in the last Olympics, but since then, still been the world number one, you should have some sort of recourse, because this is just, it's like, this is why I sort of hate rules. I hate when there is something that is so clearly should not be happening, but they're like, well, that's the rules. And it's like, well, that is so stupid. It is so stupid. I understand that this is how things are done. I understand that everybody in the track world, you have to make it through the trials. You have to win to get there. But I just feel like things like this should be guarded against, Senior. And yeah, I have very strong feelings about that.
I mean, I don't follow track and field, so you would know this better than I, but my first reaction was, how is that a thing? Why do they not have a rule against that? Like, whether she won or not in general, I just feel like if it was something that was out of her hands, again, I don't watch, so maybe that's just part of the sport, but something, if you know that she's very capable of it, it's not her fault she got clipped. I don't know. That's just me thinking in other sport ways.
Right. So I do want to get to the WNBA Commissioner's Cup, but Charlotte, I want to ask you, and they said it was incidental contact, which happens. The only thing I would say rebut to what you said is, it's 4 years between the Olympics. Now, I get what you're saying about cumulative. If she's still number one and nobody is beating her, I get it. But every 4 years, someone new can come along. There can be someone that all of a sudden we've seen a champion and then they get beat. And that's why I think we do the trials. Now, she's young. Yes. I'm not talking about someone who's been to 3 or 4 Olympics and is starting to get old. But there's part of me that kind of likes the meritocracy of go out there on the track and do it again, and if you're the best, then be the best and get there. But along with that, does come the possibility of something like this happening.
No, I totally hear you. As I was hearing myself talk, I was like, yeah, well, there's also the idea of like, well, go out and earn it again. But this sort of thing just feels silly, where it's based on an appeal and then they can't overturn her. They can't, like, if she falls down, like, if it was contact, it gets such gray areas that I'm like, well, what, can you just send one other person? Can you make an exception? Like, don't not send any of the people who won, but just like toss her in there. What is, like, it's a plane ticket. Come on, U.S. track and field.
It's a plane ticket. It's a tough call. Again, we'll see such joy in these Olympics, but again, what goes along with it is some heartache as well, whether it's the Olympics or trying to get there. And I think Mo went through that. Feel bad for her in that situation. Claudia, let's get to the WNBA Commissioner's Cup. And not one of the top teams like last year where we had the top teams in it. This year, we have a team who is playing better this year and wants to get noticed a bit.
Yeah, Minnesota Lynx, actually, I was just checking the standings on top of the West, but they took down the league leading Liberty, which is huge, 94-89 to win the Commissioner's Cup trophy. An in-season competition started back in 2021. $500,000 prize pool, which is great. I'm sure they also just like the bragging rights too. You take down the Liberty right now, who has the second shortest odds to win it all at plus 190, right behind the Las Vegas Aces. Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve said after the team beat New York, you got to talk about us now. You've got no choice. And Charlotte, she's kind of right.
Yeah. Well, the Lynx, I mean, they've such a storied franchise. I mean, in the mid 2010s, they were just dominant. I think also the Aces are only 2 games above 500 right now. So they are, and I'm not speaking badly about them at all. A'ja Wilson's unbelievable. I've loved the rookie Kate Martin story, their friendship. But I think the Lynx have come in with something to prove. There were a lot of questions about their defense heading into this year, and I think that they've really made strides there, obviously. I think that this is one of those really fun stories where, you have someone like Nafisa Collier who's playing out of her mind. And it changes the narrative of the sport. I think that this is a great way to start being like, hey, I know everybody, especially casual fans, are talking about the Liberty and the Aces, but like, check out the Lynx, check out the Connecticut Sun in second in the East. There's some real people clipping at the heels here that I think just is also a much more a fun narrative to take away from all of the rookie discourse, shall we say.
Well, we started talking about the super teams like we did in the NBA last year, right? With the Liberty and the Aces, and they played for the title in the Commissioner Cup, which the Liberty won, and then the Aces won the championship. So, but this year, like you mentioned, the Sun, the Lynx, I mean, they're both the Sun are what they both have 3 losses. Everybody, the top teams, Liberty had 3 losses as well. And we talked about the Aces. They were on a 3-game losing streak at one point. They're kind of in the middle of the pack right now from the playoff teams. How important or how much do you think now they can make a run that Chelsea Gray is back? She had just came back from her foot injury and now can get back in the groove again.
Big time. They are the 2-time defending champions. A'ja Wilson, MVP. Like, you can never count that out. I think that sometimes earlier stumbles in the season too can help you sort of get your act back together. I would not ever count out the Aces. But I do think there's a lot of new blood in the league. There's a lot of stuff getting shaken up. So I like seeing the Lynx take back what had once been theirs, even though, it's not the finals, but it's something. It matters.
And at this point, we have at the bottom of the playoffs, we have the Sky with Angel Reese and the Fever with Caitlin Clark battling for that 8th and last spot in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. Coming up next, I never thought I'd be talking about the Hallmark Channel and the NFL in the same breath. Coming up, though, we're going to talk about love. Yeah, love.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We've gotten halfway through the second hour, which means we now talk about the most important things of the day, and that's love. Because the NFL and Hallmark are teaming up to make a love movie, and it's going to be filmed at Arrowhead Stadium. Yes, the Chiefs will be involved. Very interesting. It's part of the 15th annual Countdown to Christmas programming event. Movie set to begin production in July, which seems like a quick turnaround, but they're going to film it in Kansas City with locations including Arrowhead Stadium. And we bring this up, of course, it's our excuse to talk about the one and only, because I am now a Swiftie, so I can introduce this. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. You can call them, what did you call it, Senior?
So we're going to put this out on the poll before we get into this discussion.
I'm going to say it wrong.
This is what we do. We mash up the names of the famous couples out there. So at GoJo and Golic, we're going to have the poll. Should the duo be called Tavis? A mixture of obviously Taylor and Travis. Should it be Tavis? Should it be Swelchie for Swift and Kelce? Or should it be both? Should we call them first name, last name? Should it be Tavis Swelchie?
Guys, it's already Tavis.
That's what I said. I said it was already Tavis. Swelchie
Senior,
sounds...
it's already Tavis. Yeah, I'm sorry. I like Swelchie better. I think that's funnier, but I think that the hashtag Tavis is already like very much a thing.
I know that because I'm part of Swiftie's Twitter now, so I actually know that.
Charlotte, I mean, that's it. Claudia is now, it took her forever, her last couple of days on this show, and she finally has come out as a Swiftie, like, I mean, big time, right?
Yeah, I was actually watching collaboration videos of them this morning, and they're just so cute, and all the little clips of Travis talking about her being his lady, and wow, I love it.
Because you were cynic. You were cynic about it, right? You thought it was PR.
Yeah,
Claudia.
She's the most popular person on the planet.
Okay, people, don't act like you've never been a hater and then turned into a
We've been
lover.
waiting for you. Oh, miss, it's a publicity stunt. No,
it did seem like it the way at one point.
Just happy to have you. Just happy to have you. This is crazy to me that they're making. Sorry. It's not crazy to me that they are making a movie based on Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I'm honestly surprised it took this long. Yes, obviously they're doing it for Christmas, but the fact that the NFL was like, you know what? I think that Hallmark is going to do this anyway. Let's get in on this. Let's get a cut of the money. Let's film it at Arrowhead. I just wonder how obvious the likeness between Travis and Taylor is going to be, to the point where if they can say, hey, we have to get a cut of this too. And look how cute he is up there on stage with her. Oh my God.
It is.
I can't handle it.
What'd you think of that? Obviously Mike broke it down big time, but you had to just absolutely love this.
Well, I loved it for several reasons. I think that my first reaction was, Travis is such a natural entertainer. He committed to the bit so fully. He was so in character. It was a delight to see. I think someone who's followed his career, and I interviewed him so many times before he was famous, before the Chiefs were good. You always knew that Trav had this in him, and to see him up there, I wouldn't be shocked if this were his idea. If he was like, babe, looks really fun. Do you think you can get me some red bottom shoes and a tux? Also, obviously, and you guys and Mike talked about it so beautifully, but it is huge to see someone in this very masculine role, the most masculine, one could argue, in American society, of a football player, to say, I am, first of all, thrilled to be supporting my partner. Second of all, I am going to do something in a much more feminine space and really take up space and be proud of it and own it in a way that is exciting to see. So I think that he is he's showing a lot of guys that this is the correct way to act, is to support the woman you're with and to be all in.
He's the perfect person to go out there and say, the dude has such a great personality. He's not afraid to put himself out there at all. So I thought this was really cool. So Charlotte, since you're the one more invested in this than Claudia and I, we both are fans of fans of theirs and this union. Give us the prediction on when he pops the question.
Okay. Thank you so much for asking me. These two
Oh, boy.
people definitely already engaged. I'm sorry. Taylor Swift does not bring a boyfriend up on stage. First of all, also, she was wearing her white set. He was in a tux. I just think that she posted him on Instagram a few days ago. Then she brings him on stage and then posts him again. I don't think you're doing that unless if she doesn't have the ring yet, she knows it's coming. They've had multiple conversations about this. Personally, look at me, I'm Brian Windhorst talking about Taylor Swift. There is a feeling in my head that they got engaged at Lake Como because they were on a boat and they had a professional photographer taking pictures of them. And I just think that's a little weird to do unless you're celebrating some big event. So I think that they got engaged at Lake Como. I think we'll hear about it later. I think they were already engaged. She brought him on stage. She was wearing white. He was in a tux. Boom, bada bing, bada bang. You're welcome.
That's the investigative reporting that we were looking for. I'm actually I'm so bought in. That's so true, Charlotte.
That's connecting the dots that only you, Charlotte, or my son Mike could do in this situation. So we will see. How about another? I'd like to know your guys' thoughts about another love story out there that includes Bill Belichick at 72 and girlfriend Jordan Hudson. I thought she was 24, but I see here 23.
She's 23.
According to TMZ, they are living together. I just want to know, what the hell are you talking about? What are we doing here? What do we think of this relationship?
What do they talk about? Like, what do they talk about? They live two separate different worlds, completely different worlds. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the dude, but just
I don't want to judge someone based on an age gap relationship. However, 23 and 72 is a big age gap, and they met and bonded over her homework when she was in college as a student athlete cheerleader. I just feel like this, guys.
It's love,
listen,
though. If it's love.
Listen, if they're both cool with it, cool. I feel like I need a shower. This is a tough one for me. Now, somebody that knows Bill a lot better than we do, Rob Gronkowski, and you always a little trepidation when you're going to play some Gronk sound, but this is Gronk talking about his former coach dating the 23-year-old.
He always told us there's three things out there that don't get caught up in. What were the three things? What was the trifecta, Julian? Can you please explain the trifecta?
Trifecta would be, Mr. Gronk, would it be alcohol one?
Alcohol was one, and Coach Belichick did not partake in alcohol. I can tell you that.
Two, is it assholes?
Asshole is number two, and I would say Coach Belichick did partake in being an asshole at some times.
Number three, is that girls?
Yeah, girls. Yeah,
girls.
That's the proper way to put it.
Girls.
And now he's all caught up with the girls. We love you, Coach. We love you.
Oh, wow.
Called out.
Oh, wow.
There is
so much to unpack there. Oh, Rob Gronkowski is just the gift that keeps on giving, I think. Look, they're adults, both of them, barely, but they are. And if this is what you want to do, do what you want to do. That's totally fine. I'm not one to judge or really care what other people are doing. But if I were a 23-year-old, I'm not sure I'd be doing that. So
since we're not going to put up the poll because it is Tavis, we were going to put up a poll on a name. Let's put up this poll. Which relationship lasts longer, Travis and Taylor or Bill and Jordan?
I'll go Tavis on that
in their relationship.
Oh my God.
So we'll put that up on a GoJo and Golic. Coming up next, we finish the show as we always do with this, that, and the third. And we start with just another coach that just slams his foot right into his own mouth. Welcome back, GoJo and Golic. Again, no GoJo today as he is just about taking off for his 10-day trip to Japan. Charlotte Wilder in all day for us. We really appreciate that. Claudia Bellafato in the Boston studios as well. And before we get to this, that, and the third, as always, I'd like you to download, subscribe, rate, and review. Wherever you listen, leave us a 5-star rating. We'd appreciate that. You can watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 Eastern on DraftKings Network, streamline free on Samsung TV Plus, Roku channel, Xumo Play, DraftKingsNetwork.com. Or you need to catch up. You can always find full episodes on DraftKings YouTube channel as well and catch the podcast after the show as well. A lot of ways to digest us as well. As we're going to go to this, that, and the third, as we always do to end the show. This one, gang, really set me off. Everybody mad at the college athletes for wanting money or getting money or be able to move how much they've ruined college sports, which they haven't. And every now and then we say, well, coaches have been able to do this and move without, saying anything all the time. Well, let's bring in Jim Schlossnagle, the Texas A&M baseball coach. Now, they just had a great World Series with Tennessee. Tennessee wins a deciding game, wins a national championship over Texas A&M. Jim Schlossnagle is at the mic after this game, right after this game, okay? I won't tell you where this ended up, but I just listened to this soundbite. What he did, he was asked about the rumor that the Texas job is open and that was he rumored to be the next Texas coach, and this is how he answered it.
I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. That's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. Let's write that.
Gosh, you know what? You love when a coach comes out, makes his stand, and says, damn it, that's a selfish question by you. I did everything to coach this team, and I'm going to be coach of this team. Oh, by the way, everybody, less than 24 hours later, he took the Texas job. He left.
Oh, my God.
So he sat there and just BS'd everybody on that. And oh, by the way, he did it a few years ago when he was the TCU coach and talked about how that was his job and he wasn't leaving that job. And a couple weeks later, he left for the Texas A&M job. And now he just berates a reporter who asks a fair question. Hey, rumors are out there. What do you say? He could have answered it differently. I'm worried, this team now, I want to talk to these guys, whatever, here and there. But no, he went off on a rant on how he gave up everything for this Texas A&M job, only to leave it 24 hours later. Stop banging on the players that are getting money and able to move when coaches sit here and pull this garbage. Yes, Charlotte?
Methinks the lady doth protest too much, folks. That is a big tell. First of all, he also never said, Senior, in that press conference, the slimiest part of this, he never said, I'm not taking that job.
Yes,
he said,
right.
I've poured everything into this job. How dare you ask me that? And that just feels like someone lashing out when they know that they are about to be the bad guy, Claudia.
The reporter just has to love waking up to that headline.
Oh.
She's like, well, yeah, we all knew it, so there we go. That reporter's probably pumped today.
I mean, just amazing. You could handle it so many ways, and that's the way you choose to handle it. And then you leave. And oh, by the way, you had done it before. So that's for that, Claudia. Let's go to a very, 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 very tall person.
Yeah, apparently the tallest woman in the world at 7'3". She is ballin'. It is China's Zhang Ziyu, just 17 years old, and she just had a breakout performance at the FIBA debut. If you're not watching us on DraftKings Network or DraftKings YouTube, 36 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks, and she's just getting started. Like I said, 17 years old, Charlotte. She's a beast.
How do you even defend? How do you do anything? Oh my God, that is incredible. Do we know anything about her future? Oh, I hadn't seen this before. I'm going to go into the deepest rabbit hole ever once we sign off the air today.
And there's talk that her feet are pretty good for her size as well.
Look at
Obviously,
her.
it's very difficult with the competition. It's almost like watching, remember we saw a lot of highlights of that kid that's 7'9" and he's playing at IMG Academy, and just towering over everybody there. Cause you always wonder of how they can move because, you do get some big men that can move, like Wemby's a unicorn being 7'4" and able to do what he does. So we start to expect more and more 7-footers to be able to move because we see it more in the NBA. But again, to not only be that tall, but to consider or measured as the tallest woman in the world, and to play a sport like this, to play basketball, I'll be interested. And just 17, where she ends up and how she ends up playing. I'm very interested, like you, Charlotte, in that development.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And then we go from that to a budding star of an athlete to a literal pirate trying to meet some pirates.
Well, a drunk guy wannabe pirate. Let's call it that. Because the guy in Pittsburgh had a bit too many of certain type of beverages, and he stole a yacht, apparently, and told the police, man, I was just trying to go meet some Pittsburgh pirates. And the police said, well, that's illegal. So he faces charges of unlawful taking, receiving stolen property, and defiant trespassing. But Senior, you said he didn't even drive the boat. He just untied it, which is really dangerous. But in the end, he's sort of the pirate himself, is he not?
Yeah, I guess he unmoored it. He untied it and didn't start it up and just floated down the river until he hit something and stopped. So I don't know what this is when alcohol is involved, what happens? You don't really think this whole thing out. The one thing I don't know, Charlotte, is where he was going to meet some of these pirates or what the plan was, but it seems he did have the initial plan of, I'm going to get on the yacht, I'm going to untie it, and I guess see where I float.
What's funny though is when I stole a yacht in Pittsburgh and went to meet the Pittsburgh Pirates, the police were like, "Oh, I get it. That's totally if that's your reasoning, that's fine." So it's interesting that they came down so hard on this guy. I have a theory, guys. I think it would be really easy to steal a boat. I have game plan. I've like gamed the whole system out, especially a sailboat. You just take off the serial numbers, you switch out the GPS stuff, you paint it a different color once you get it onto the open ocean. I think that there are, if you're not that drunk, I think that there are ways to be pretty smart about stealing a boat.
Well,
but if a boat goes missing in the New England area or around New York, it wasn't me.
It's a way to save yourself there. If it's not a sailboat, though, you better be able to know how to hotwire, though, right? Because this was a yacht. I mean, you're not just being able to sail off.
Yes. Sometimes, though, these boats have not as sophisticated key systems as you would think. So, not to brag, I know a lot about boats, and it is one place in my life that it's like the most knowledge I have that is not useful anymore. It's not that hard to hotwire a boat.
I will say, though, I also grew up in boats, so I know boats are hard to drive. Like, if we're talking actual yacht, if you have to, not once you're out in the open ocean, it's fine, but if you're navigating, like, to take it out of a yacht club, it's not easy, especially if you're drunk. You will be found. Like, there's no doubt.
Yeah,
Except, I don't know, Charlotte seems to really, have
Charlotte,
plans.
I want to ask you, Charlotte, I need the truth out of you, and maybe I hope there's a statute of limitations here that can save you, but it sounds to me like you've stolen a boat before.
Well, I can neither confirm nor deny. I borrowed a boat.
Peter, she poured her heart into this show. Why would you accuse her of something like that?
I borrowed a boat. I gave it back. It all worked out. Very good at driving boats. If anyone wants to turn that into a video someday, let me know. It has been just an absolute pleasure to spend the morning with you two.
Charlotte, has been great. We found out she's a boat thief. All right, good to know.
No, we didn't. I didn't confirm it.
Okay. You're the baseball coach now. You're Schlossnagel. Well done. Yeah. Good luck and enjoy the draft. Day one tonight of the draft. Charlotte will be there. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, let us know somehow, some way. We've got a poll up too about Travis and Taylor Swift. So check that out as well. We'll talk to you tomorrow.